I wanted you to just give us your opinion and your interpretation, if you can, in like a nutshell, of what we saw with Dana Coverstone's dreams that he shared, because obviously there were some moments in the dream that didn't come to pass to the T. Like, it wasn't an exact dream. So would you explain to us what happened with the Dana Coverstone dreams, and what your analysis, what your interpretation of them were?
Absolutely. It's a fascinating thing. And I don't think we can understand without saying this, that the Dana Coverstone dreams absolutely rocked the prophetic movement to its core. And it was the start of everything we saw related to the election dreams that happened last year, which is causing a lot of people to rethink prophetic words entirely, dreams entirely. There's people that are shutting their ministries down and apologizing because they felt like they got some things wrong. So it's a very, very important question, and I'm glad you brought it up. So what happened is, in December of 2019, Dana Coverstone has a dream where he sees all of these visions in a dream, and he sees thousands dead, ambulances flying by, bodies, people on ventilators, people wearing masks, people protesting in the streets, violent protests in the streets, protesters with masks on. And he's thinking, gosh, you know, if you saw all that in fast sequence, you got to be thinking, man, this is the end of the world. And so he woke up and he told a couple of people in his Bible study, he's a pastor of a small church in the middle of Kentucky, and he told a couple of his friends and was like, well, okay, you know, I'll just hold on to this. And then as 2020 unfolded, we saw every single one of these things happen exactly as he saw them. And it's just like, wow, that's super interesting. So in June, he has two dreams back to back on 2 days. And the second one is, the first thing that he saw at the beginning of the first dream is he saw a calendar, and he saw 2020, and he saw January, February, March, and it stopped, and a finger tapped 3 times on March. And then April, May, June, and a finger tapped 3 times on June. And then all of these events unfolded. And then in the second dream, he sees a calendar again, and he sees June, July, August, September, and it tapped 3 times in September, and then October, November, and he sees a fist ball up and hit the calendar, and the calendar explodes and the numbers fly everywhere. And then he sees these images of violent protesters with guns. He sees more masks. He sees more stuff related to health stuff, global pandemic, all of these things. And then he starts to see things like gargoyles attacking human beings. He sees Russia and Chinese soldiers on American soil.
Yes. Yeah.
So that was a big part of people.
Everyone's like, what? We're about to have World War III. Like, what's happening? I mean, it went viral in the Christian world.
It went viral. And then he had a third dream that a lot of people don't even remember, that was just about a coin shortage. It's pretty much basically it. He goes to a bank, it says no change available, and that's pretty much the dream. And so a friend of mine who's an avid dream interpreter was trained by John Paul Jackson. She sees these dreams, because when you're a dream interpreter, something like somebody posted, what he did is he put it on YouTube, and all of a sudden he woke up the next morning with like 1 million views. This guy had, I think, 1,100 people that were friends on Facebook. So now he has like 40,000, literally 40,000 friend requests, and people want to know who is that. And so what happens is, when people have a question like this, they send it to whoever they go to for answers. So a person like me will get this literally 100 times. People all over the world will send, what is it? Did you see this? Check this out. You know, and it's over and over and over again. So it gets to the point, and a lot of the prophetic voice is the same way, you know. And so what a lot of people did is they began to make videos that they called a response to the Dana Coverstone dreams. Well, what my friend did, because she got it so many times, she said, you know what, let's get him on a show. Let's do like a video blog with him and interview him. And so she calls him and she ropes me and says, will you be on this call? Yeah, sure. I saw the dreams. Yeah, it sounds good. And so as soon as we get on, her technology goes out. And so it's me and Dana, and I'm interviewing Dana. And this was the first interview he ever did. And I treated him really well. And he even says, you were the first person that was nice to me, because a whole ton of people started saying, oh, that's a demonic dream. We need to rebuke it. It's just an attack of the enemy on this guy.
Yeah. They really attacked Dana. They
Yeah,
really
they really attacked this guy. He had personal friends to lead him. He had people, he might have had people leave his church. He had, I mean, it was just absolute chaos in this guy's life. He's gotten, for ever since then now, he's got multiple death threats. He said people show up at his home at 4 a.m. I mean, he's had to call the authorities. I mean, it's been, his life is forever changed because he took a risk and he shared these dreams. So after I did the interview with him, I'm like, God, I feel like there's more. And I felt like God said, I want you to interpret these dreams. And so I did. And so I started, I would wake up and we're in the middle of COVID and nothing's going on. I'm, you know, nobody's working. So I'm just sitting here in my house, like, okay, reading his dreams, listening to his dreams. And it took about 32 days of going back to God saying, give me more, show me more, show me this, show me that. I started writing stuff down. And by the time I was done, I had developed what I call a dossier. So, and I'll get into this a little bit more, but when you look at a dream as one piece of intelligence, if you have 3 different pieces of intelligence, you have enough information. Instead of writing a report on one note, you can create a dossier on the whole topic of the breadth of what the dreams are saying. Well, this dossier was 38 pages long by the time I was done with it. And it had 31 footnoted, hyperlinked articles to portions of what he saw that already came to pass. But the biggest question that everybody asked me is, what about the Russian and Chinese soldiers? And the first thing that I do is I was on a podcast with him, or a video with him on his YouTube channel. And I said, people need to understand dreams are not prophecy. They're not. Now, let me clarify. Dreams can be prophetic in nature, but for somebody to have a dream and to take every single word in it literally, as a prophet says, thus says the Lord, this and this and this will happen in this order. If you do that, you'll be way off on what you think the dream means. And that's what a lot of people did, is because there's a lot that came to pass that was literal. Well, God began showing me nuances in the dream. One of the things he said in his first 2 dreams is he said, I saw. He kept saying, I saw so much that I started, as I'm writing up the dream, I started deleting it, because he'd say, I saw an ambulance driving by. And then I saw that, and then I saw that, and then I saw, and I'm just like, and as I'm deleting the instances of the words I saw, excuse me, I felt like God said,
yes, we are live.
I felt like God said, go back and look at the I saws. And so I did. I counted them up. And there were 32 instances that he said I saw in the first dream, and 34 instances in the second dream. And I'm like, okay, God, if you're telling me to count how many there are, there has to be a level of significance. And I'm like, what is he seeing? Is he seeing the events as they will literally unfold? And here's what I heard. I heard the start of the book of Revelation. I heard, like John on the island of Patmos. And of course, the book of Revelation says, I, John, was in the Spirit on the island of Patmos, was in the Spirit on the Lord's day, and I saw this. And I'm like, I didn't get it at first. I'm like John on the island of Patmos. You know, you look up Revelation 1, I, John, on the island of Patmos, saw the Lord. And I'm just like, what is this? And then I suddenly realized that he's not talking about visions. John isn't in Revelations. He's telling his vision. And then I heard, tell a vision. Television. Like, none of us probably saw ambulances streaming by. None of us probably saw people on ventilators. We only saw this on the news. And so it wasn't literal. It was what the news was telling us. So I began to go back and look up articles. Did you know Forbes magazine had an article that said that they did a study? Somebody had done a study on COVID and said 40 million people will die. This was a headline in Forbes.
Right.
You know, and I'm like, if God was showing him just headlines and not what's actually going to happen, that's why this looks so bad. But these were the exact same headlines that we all saw in the news. And then God also said, what book of the Bible is Revelation? And I'm like, it's the 66th book of the Bible. There were 32 instances of I saw in the first dream, 34 in the second. 32 plus 34 is 66. I'm like, oh man, you have got to be kidding me. This is insane.
Yeah, no, God just blows me away every time I hear the interpretations of these types, just any dream. It's fascinating. I know we probably don't have that much time to go into the change, but with the third dream that Dana had, but it was so incredible. I feel like we should share just a little bit. I want you to share just a little bit, because obviously Dana had in the third dream, there was a shortage of change, but the Lord told you the interpretation that God gave was actually not literally the coins that were low, but it had another meaning. So please.
Right. It was about the people on the face of the coins. So I had to look up, okay, George Washington, Abraham Lincoln, Thomas Jefferson, FDR, and JFK, because they're on who's on the pennies, nickels, dimes, quarters, half dollars, right? And so I looked up what's the significance of the life of JFK. Well, he was known for challenging America with the moonshot, the famous moonshot speech. He was. Wait.
Can I just interrupt you?
Yeah.
Why did you start researching JFK with this dream?
Because JFK is, what is he on, the quarter or the half dollar? The half dollar. He's on the half dollar.
Okay, and so that was one of the coins that there was shortage of.
Yeah. He walks into the bank, and the president of the bank says, "We have no pennies, nickels, dimes, quarters, half dollars." Well, they could have just said, "We have no change." But since they name each one, now each one becomes a symbol. So now it's like, okay, what does a penny mean?
Yeah.
Who's on the penny? Abraham Lincoln. What's the significance of Abraham Lincoln? Well, he, Emancipation Proclamation. He freed the slaves. He, fought the Civil War and won. He died 3 days. I was killed 3 days after the end of the Civil War. He's known for this and this and this and this. But those are like the broad strokes of his life. What about George Washington? What about FDR? What about JFK? What about Thomas Jefferson? Mm-hmm. And so what God did is he started taking me on a historical path, looking at some of the most profound stuff had to do with the election of 1800, because there was another reference in the dream to the $2 bill. And they said, well, the $2 bill, we still have the $2 bill. And I actually looked up, and I didn't even know this existed. Every year, the Federal Reserve sends to the U.S. Department of the Treasury a money order that says, this is the amount of currency that we need in circulation this year. Go print, the Bureau of Engraving and Printing, go print this many dollars, and the U.S. Mint, go mint this many coins so we can have it in circulation. Well, 2020, because there was so much lockdown going on and money wasn't circulating, they had to have an addendum to the original order, because the order comes out at like the end of the fiscal year. And then so they know what they're going to print throughout the whole year. Well, because money wasn't circulating, they added an addendum to the order, and they printed more and more and more than they ever had before. So what the bank president was telling him in the dream is that we ran out of coins and we're not printing more. Exactly the opposite was true. They are printing more than they do in a typical year, except for one thing. And he said, because he was getting change for a garage sale, and he said, well, there's no change. How do I charge $1.50 for anything? And she said, prepare for hyperinflation and just charge $2. And so what she's signaling is that the $2 bill is still available. Well, there's only one piece of currency that wasn't printed in the original order from the Fed or in the addendum order from the Fed last year in 2020. Only one piece of currency that wasn't printed. And guess what it was?
The $2 bill.
The $2 bill. So now it's like, who's on the $2 bill? Thomas Jefferson. So that leaves me into the whole life story of Thomas Jefferson, and it gets to a contested election that happens in 1800. And the bottom line is, the bottom line piece of intelligence was that I felt like, and I wrote this and published this in June, that the U.S. presidential election in 2020 would be decided by a vote in the U.S. House of Representatives. That's exactly what happened January 6th.
Wow.
We knew this in June. We were looking, I'm reading books in June on the election of 1800, trying to understand, trying to decide. They had you know who the vice president, you know how Pence had that moment on January 6th? You know who the vice president was in 1800?
You told me, I forgot.
Thomas Jefferson. He was the guy running for president against John Adams. And you know where there was a major amount of corruption in the election? in Georgia. Again, like Georgia. Why is Georgia highlighted? And so all of these people, all of the news media and the major politicians came out and they said, Georgia, 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 we can't trust Georgia. And so they thought that it came to a tie vote. And so it's up to the vice president, just like it was January 6th, to make the determination, are we going to accept these votes or not? And everybody thought, because the media had published all this stuff, there's no way he's going to accept it. And one, it's self-serving. And number two, it's been proven that there's been fraud in Georgia. So everybody thought he's just going to discount the electoral votes from Georgia. He doesn't. He opens the envelopes. He counts the electoral votes from Georgia. Because he counted them, there was a dead heat tie, and they had to go to a vote. They voted 36 times before they made Thomas Jefferson the next president of the United States.
Wow. And the Lord, in this dream where people are thinking, oh, there's going to be a shortage of money. There's going to be a shortage of money, inflation, inflation. They completely missed the real interpretation of God. And God was pointing to Thomas Jefferson, Georgia, that there's a contested election. There's something wrong. There's like layers and layers and layers of what God is actually trying to say. And I love that Sam just said, so our dreams are much deeper than we realize.
Yes, so much so. I can't even begin to tell you the rabbit holes that you will go down. I've kind of done a thing, especially this last year since COVID. I'm not a super big like conspiracy theory, quote, conspiracy theory documentary watcher. You know, I'm not looking up all the JFK assassination films or, you know, aliens or anything like that. I just don't have time for it. But when people get dreams, or when I get dreams, and God brings up, because again, I believe that dreams come from God. And so when you have this mindset and this paradigm, you're like, if God wants to talk to me about the JFK assassination, because somebody sent me a dream that he was literally in the limo, JFK to the right of him, Jackie to the left. He's looking at Jackie. The blood splatters all over her face. They go under the tunnel in Daley Plaza, and it's like they went underwater. And when they come up, there's a picnic basket on the dashboard. And he asks God, why did this have to happen? And God says, for all the money in the basket. That's a riddle. Now I'm fascinated. Now I got to understand the context. So guess what? I'm watching the Zapruder film in slow motion on replay. I'm going through all of these documentaries that have these theories, the two-shooter, you know, the grassy knoll, the single shooter, the Warren Commission report. I'm looking at all of this information because if God is going to take the time to give somebody a coded message and a riddle attached to it about the JFK assassination, and it ends up on my desk, that means that I need to go study this. And so a lot of the movies that I watch, a lot of the books that I read come completely from dreams that other people have had.
Wow. To try to break it down and figure out what it means.
Absolutely.